Over the last 12 years, I have had 9 Lamborghini Murcielagos, generally the worst examples that I can find of my favorite car. And today I own 10% of what I believe is the best car ever made, the US manual transmission Lamborghini Murcielago LP640. I've got my Verde Draco car that I've had for about 5 years. I've got the Nero Nemesis 3-accident spray painted matte black car. And then I've also got the latest acquisition, the only manual LP640 in the whole wide world in Monterey Blue. Now that wasn't exactly a planned purchase last year, but thanks to the power of Premier Financial Services, I was able to make it happen and maintain my good standing as a bidder on cars and bids. But I've loved having all 3. That one came very soon after I got rid of the LP670 SV, a lovely car, more presence you might say, with all the carbon fiber wing and everything else, but the manual car is really where it's at. And this is 10% of the cars in the US. Lamborghini only brought 23 manual 640 coupes and 10 manual roadsters to the US. And a lot of them have been written off, destroyed, or exported, so there aren't that many remaining. Mine have the most miles, and some of them have the worst history, but they are still so much fun to drive. And regardless of the value, I just want to spend some time today taking the latest one, the blue car, for a drive and showing you just why I think it's my pick for the best car in the world. But please check out Premier Financial Services at the link in the description below. They can get you pre-qualified so you're not scrambling after you agree to purchase a car, but you know exactly how much buying power you have. So contact them, fill out their Simple Credit app, and they'll let you know exactly how their Simple Lease can help you buy your dream car. Now let's go for a spin in the Monterey Blue 07 LP640, and I think you'll like it just as much as I do. It never gets old putting your foot down in a Murcielago. But honestly, what makes a car the best in the world? Clearly it's a very subjective thing, and the most important thing would be, what is the best car to you? And for the last 20 years, a Mercy has been that car for me since the first time I saw it, and certainly as I've gotten to drive them more and more, I believe it more and more. And so it really isn't about the value, it's about the feeling of the car, the usability of the car, the way a car makes you believe in it every time you hear it explode things behind you in a reasonably controlled manner. And I love that this is a naturally aspirated V12. I love that it's a proper manual transmission. I love that in general I can fit in the car. I love the way the car looks. I think it is one of the most elegantly simple and naturally beautiful supercars, and I think it was designed perfectly in a line of Lamborghinis that it fits into perfectly. I think a Diablo is obviously more garish, maybe even a little bit more cool. An Aventador is a little bit faster, a little bit more tactile, certainly the handling improved, but to me this is the sweet spot. Now there are quantitative ways to say that a car is actually the best in the world. Most of us would say that the McLaren F1 is the greatest car ever made. But this car is a little bit more rare. 88 coupes, 16 roadsters versus 106 F1s, makes a little bit more power, and in all practical applications is faster. Certainly the F1 has a bit more top speed. It's a lot more comfortable to be in. 2 seats rather than 3 in the same amount of space. It gives us more room to look around. The visibility is much better. The brakes are much better. The engine sounds much better. None of this takes away from the F1. When we got to use the F1 from the Revs Institute during Car Trek 5, it was certainly one of the most amazing automotive experiences that I have had. That being said, when I got back in my Mercy, I was glad to be there. The F1 is good enough that you don't have to apologize for it. And that means that when you think about its legacy, its reputation, the significance of what the car is, the driving doesn't take away from that. There are some cars like an XJ220 or an EB110 where maybe that could be said, where they're just not quite usable enough to feel as awesome as they deserve to be based on what they represent in the history of the automobile or the supercar. But this car doesn't require that. Anyone can be in the car and say, that is awesome, that is a special place to be, and it feels like something that you just want to keep driving rather than get out of it and say that you got to drive the car. And so would I put endless more miles on a McLaren F1? I would put every mile I could afford to put on an F1. But this has been such a lovely experience in a car that's less than 10% the cost to maintain and a whole lot easier to just hop in and run to the grocery store or drive across the country. Now, do I need 3 of them? Obviously, I do not. I didn't really mean to buy this one, but I have been very pleased to have it in the garage. It's really a shame that so few people chose to order this gorgeous color. And Monterey Blue wasn't even offered as a color just a few short years later because Vic Bolian, who named the color as Lamborghini's distributor for the United States, ended up stealing $10 million from Volkswagen Credit and fled the country. And so now it's called Blue Nethunes, and it is once again available in a similar shade, but all the colors changed around 2012 because they changed the way that they were mixing them. But I love the way the car looks, especially in person. The effect of it, the blue metallic paint is awesome. But of course, when we think about rare, gated manual LP640s or Mercies in general, there's that question of like, well, why are they so rare if they are so good? And that is honestly an artifact of the time. So from 2000 to 2010, the performance of exotic cars was getting a whole lot better, but it wasn't getting better in the same way that it had in the 90s and in the 80s, where generally the engines just got bigger. There were more emissions requirements to be sensitive to. There were more rules that they had to follow, and they couldn't just keep putting bigger and bigger engines in these cars. So the way to make these cars faster from 2000 to 2010 was make the transmissions better. And that is where the single clutch sequential manual transmissions gained so much traction. Because when a manufacturer is chasing that extra tenth or 0.2 of a second, 0 to 60 or in the quarter mile, the easiest way to do that is to put the power down faster with a paddle shift transmission. And when you're selling new cars, it's a totally different process than the attraction that you can create in a used car. So having a car that was that extra little bit faster mattered a whole lot. Today, nobody cares exactly what the 0 to 60 time is for a 15 or 22-year-old car. They just care about how it makes you feel. And again, for me, for what I love about a car, nothing makes me feel better than this. Naturally aspirated, proper manual, 3 pedals, all that you could ever want out of a car. Now, of course, there are obvious drawbacks. There is not much room, there is not much visibility. However, the car is still gigantic and barely fits through a garage door, won't go over any significant bumps. Everything that is a leading edge or close to the ground is very expensive carbon fiber. There are a few parts that you cannot get, like certain things for the air conditioning. Some of the parts have become preposterously expensive, like a $12,000 idler pulley, but those don't break very much, and so it hasn't really been an issue. You do have to remove the engine if you want to replace the clutch, but I've never had to put a clutch in any of the 9 Mercies that I have owned. I get about, it seems like 1 millimeter of clutch wear out of the 7.5 available every 10 to 15,000 miles. And so that would say your theoretical clutch life is 70, 80, maybe even 100,000 miles. And so I know I'm probably close to needing a clutch on a couple of them, but they're still easy to start up and drive wherever it is that you want to go. And so whatever your dream car is, you're right. That's what I said at the end of Car Trek 5. And it's easy for a journalist or a YouTuber or anybody to say, this is the best thing ever. And it probably is in their opinion, and that's all that really matters. But you can evaluate the entire universe of cars and find whatever it is that you love. And it's an amazing added bonus when they end up going up in value. And that starts to beg the question, well, what car is currently underappreciated enough and rare enough that it could explode in value the way that manual Mercies have 10x'd during the time that I have owned them. And that doesn't happen very often, and it takes some market influence. And we've talked a lot about that between me and Tamarian and Matt Ivanhoe and the people that really do believe in these cars, own these cars, drive these cars in most cases. They have to kind of be the cheerleaders. They have to be the people on the sidelines yelling, these cars are awesome. So what car could you start yelling about, saying, this car is great, everyone should want one, they should be worth more, especially the one that I've already got in my garage? And I don't know, I get asked that a lot. I love a CLK Black Series, I love a 550 Barchetta, I love all the Lotus products before the modern age, say before 2010 especially, but in particular the Exige S. There's now the Exige 430 Cup Final Edition that's show or display eligible that you could import. I think a lot of the cars that are about to turn 25 years old, those are great candidates. Some of the TVRs that are better than the Cerbera from CarTrek 7 could do that. There really is no end to the number of cars that could become more appreciated when the right people get behind them, start documenting the rarity, start documenting the history, and just start proving how usable the cars are. There's a lot of cars that there isn't anyone out there really visibly putting miles on them, and that keeps them from becoming a lot more appreciated. And so if you do believe in a car, start telling the world about it. Show them how amazing the car is, have a blast, put miles on it, and the world and the values will follow. I'm glad they did, but I don't enjoy them anymore now that they're worth more money. I love dropping a gear, hearing them scream, and heading on down the road. Thanks for coming for a ride.